Hi, welcome to this session today. My name's Jared.
And I'm Adam.
And we're both teachers and digital learning advisors with the Department of Education. Today's session is all about navigating Microsoft workflows, productivity, and collaboration.
Absolutely. Before we get started, I would just like to acknowledge the ongoing custodians of the land and waterways where we work and live. We pay respect to elders past and present as ongoing teachers of songlines and stories and knowledge. We strive to ensure every Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander learner in New South Wales achieves their potential through education. On the screen is a lovely shot of a Lake Parramatta from the lands where I normally work and live on Durrag land, and we just acknowledge that land as well.
Awesome. So today we're going to take you through today's session. We're going to take you through a series of learning, all to do about files anywhere, anytime, like a learning progression, where we step you through what are some of the basics and how we can move through these different steps to improve our digital workflows and efficiencies while we work for some, a very new online platform.
Yeah, absolutely. So along here, the screen, you can see there's 5 different, stages, we could call them, through emerging, developing, some of those earlier phases of moving into cloud storage and utilizing some of the aspects of cloud, then consolidating, refining, and even moving into that innovating phase where cloud becomes a really big feature of our workflows in the classroom, of our workflows in administration and throughout school life, And
when we look at these 5 different stages, if you class yourself in that emerging stage, you were probably someone previously with the old ET file server. You probably heavily relied on that server, and that's where all your files lived, and you were forever emailing things home for yourself. And now as we move into the cloud, we're going to show you some steps on ways of working in that space now, and then how to move from that into developing. The developing phase is probably prior to migration. You might have been a school that had dabbled in the cloud during COVID, but we're sort of looking to how can we begin to refine those processes and really start to make sure all your staff can utilize the cloud in an effective way. After that, the next step is consolidating. Now, consolidating is where you might have had a bit of a presence in the cloud, but you've got some files in different platforms. Some files came from the server. Some people are storing things on hard drives, but you might have some in Microsoft, some in Google. And we're looking to consolidate that data, moving forward to create efficient workflows. And when we get into refining, we probably say that your staff are pretty confident in using the cloud. You've been there a while. Maybe just the office probably needs a little bit of an update on their processes, but that's when you're really starting to look for how can we really harness our skills, really sharpen our skills in that space to be ready to innovate and try new things. So the first step, Adam, what are we looking at today?
Yeah, so looking at emerging, the first part of this session is going to be all about, moving on from this emerging phase and looking at syncing clients are really important, looking at Microsoft syncing clients, OneDrive, and how we can access our Microsoft Teams content through that as well. Looking at creating and sharing files, moving on from maybe always sharing a new document as an attachment to an email or sending a copy of a document to someone, looking at maybe some more efficient ways to do that. We're also looking at consolidating some of our personal files. We know that through time, technology has changed and we've moved from USB sticks, maybe portable hard drives, maybe saving things to local storage on computers, desktops and those sorts of things. We're going to look at consolidating all that into a single cloud system that is basically what we call a USB that kind of follows us around, on any computer or any device that we're using. And then we're going to look at a little bit of a streamline in terms of uploading media. So we know in schools, teachers and staff want to capture what's happening in schools. It could be some work samples from a classroom. It could be an athletics carnival that's happening. We want to be able to capture that content and actually push it straight to a cloud storage platform. Keep it off our personal devices, but also make it really accessible for all staff in terms of a workflow.
And if you look at this from a scope of learning, if you feel that you and all your staff have completed these steps, then you would then move into the developing phase. All right, so let's jump over to having a little look about what is that going to look like for you and for your school. Let's just drop that down. All right, so we are going to begin by having a look at what does this mean for you. So today's video, this part of the video is all at the Microsoft space, and we know that our personal files, well, first of all, we want to have a look at, Adam, what's the difference between our personal and shared storage? And what sort of platforms are we looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got your personal storage, Microsoft's solution to that is called your OneDrive. One of my favorite sayings is OneDrive, one user. So that's where your personal stuff lives, all of your personal content. You can use that and log into that on any device, whether it's a desktop, laptop, tablet, phone, those sorts of things. That's your content. You can choose to share content from there, but that's a choice that you get. No one else can access the content in your OneDrive. So that's your personal space where we encourage people to store if you're choosing Microsoft as your platform. In terms of, sorry, you go?
Oh, I was just going to say, and when you're talking about when you choose to where you're going to save your file, do I put in your personal space or do I go to the shared space? Think about who's the user and what's the long-term sort of longevity of this file. Who may need to use it down the track? And then we might divert to a shared storage space.
Absolutely. So shared storage within Microsoft is looking at Microsoft Teams. It is a file storage location as well as a bit of a communication tool as well. And we'll dive into a little bit that later. That we're going to show a few different ways to access that content as well using the syncing client through OneDrive. And we're going to explain, I guess, the difference between OneDrive as a storage location and OneDrive as an app itself and the functionality behind that. So
to begin with, we know that your OneDrive is accessible through the web. It's also accessible through an app. That app could be on an Apple iOS device, or we'll also talk later in this video about setting up a sync tool so your OneDrive can be seen in your File Explorer. So we always begin as a source of truth, start in your Microsoft 365 web view. We go here through our portal and we're going to jump into what that looks like when we land on our landing page.
Perfect. Now, this landing page, I guess, for Microsoft could be a little bit confusing for some staff. It's Microsoft's way of trying to be clever and show you all the different things that are connected to your Microsoft account. It can get a little bit kind of messy or confusing if you're not used to this platform. So a really good way to maneuver from here if you're looking for just your content that is stored within your OneDrive. If we go up to little 9 dots in the top corner and look for our apps and go straight into our OneDrive at the top there, and that'll take us to a similar looking page, but slightly different. And we'll kind of just bring in that scope and show us just what's sitting within our OneDrive.
When you land here in that on the online version of OneDrive, you're taken to a recently used space. Sometimes this new interface can throw a few people because it is not showing everything, it's showing your recent files. So you're probably going to navigate on the left to your My File space to see everything that sits in your personal OneDrive. Now down the left, you'll also see this space that talks about quick access. Now this is quick access to the SharePoint file repository that's attached to your Teams. Some people like to navigate to their Teams files from here. It is an avenue, but today we're mostly going to focus on accessing those files through the Teams app.
Yeah, just good to know where it is, and but we probably have an alternate preferred method for accessing our files. So this is our browser interface. No need for you to use this interface because we're going to show using the OneDrive app, which will make the accessing files and saving content and uploading content very familiar to what schools would be used to in terms of your old U drive, which is what's previously been used in schools and is still being used by some schools until you choose to make that move.
That's right. And obviously our shared space, if I jump back here to the Microsoft 365 landing, is you can't access that shared space, which is Teams. We'll see that here. I open the Teams web view. That is an avenue, particularly if you're on, say, a laptop that might not be the newest spec and might be running a bit slow. Maybe this web interface is going to be your fastest access point into your team space. And you can see here we've got an example team set up. And for those migrated schools, you'll see those eight linked spaces from your ET4L migration. But there's also an app, and we've got that open here at the bottom of the screen. When I open that up, you can see it looks very, very similar. A little bit of a nicer interface, I think, a little bit easier to navigate, makes the window a little bit larger. And this is where all our Teams files sit. Now, every channel in our team has a post space. It also has a file space. And this is where our files live. And throughout the next couple of this session and the next, we're going to talk to you about refining and utilizing power of the cloud moving forward.
Perfect. So we had a little bit of a look at our OneDrive online, which again is an okay way to get there. Some people do like that method, but we're going to have a little look at signing into our OneDrive app on our computer. So we'd encourage you to do this on any device that is regularly your computer that you would use. So it'll probably be the mini PC on the back of your main learning display, or whatever device you're using to drive your learning from the front of your classroom. If that's your regular classroom, might be your laptop that you have that is school owned, or it might be a personal laptop as well. If you're using tablets or iPads for those sorts of things, you can also log into that app on there. We're going to show what it looks like from a Windows desktop. here. So down the bottom, Jared has jumped into the search bar down the bottom left-hand corner and just simply type OneDrive, which is excellent. So then OneDrive app pops up, simply click on it, and you'll notice what comes up. Now, sometimes it wants you to do it twice. Seems to be one of those things. So if you do click on it, give it a good 10 or 15 seconds. If nothing happens, you might notice a little cloud pop up in the very bottom right-hand corner of our screen. If nothing happens, do the exact same process again. Go back to the search bar, type in OneDrive, click it again, and then you should get prompted to sign in with your Department of Education email account.
Absolutely. So you see this little cloud down here in the bottom of the screen is currently grey. Once we're signed in, that will turn blue to show us that the connection has been made. So this is going to tick away in the background. You'll probably be prompted with a department login, a secondary department login screen.
Usually, if you're on a department device, it should pick up your single sign-on, which is excellent. If you're using a personal device, you might need to sign in a couple of different times.
So we've obviously used OneDrive on this device before, so we are just going to say, let's keep using this folder.
If you're using it for the first time, that little pop-up won't occur for you, which is
Absolutely.
great.
When we say open my OneDrive folder, we'll see our file explorer should pop up, and we can see here down the left, there is our OneDrive, which appears for us. Now, all our files do sit in this space that is accessible. Just note that, think of it like another door into the same view. So this OneDrive view is the same as this, let me go back to my OneDrive, which is sitting up here. I've just got a floating meeting in the way. So
there it is.
There it is. Yeah. So these files are exactly the same as like two doors into that same content. Let's move this to the side. So whatever I do in one space is going to affect the other. I delete something in the file explorer, it's going to delete it in the web version as well. The best part about having it here in our desktop file explorer space is that we can copy and paste files just like they lived on our computer. You can also then attach files, edit, duplicate, all those sort of things that you would have been able to do if those files existed. It's probably the closest thing we have to the way it used to be compared to the way that it is now.
Absolutely. And you can treat the files very much like they are living on your computer.
Yep.
I guess to know that they are in the cloud, you can see some of those icons, that status column in the middle there. We might reduce the web browser at the back because there's a lot of
noise there.
Windows.
I might just go full screen.
Perfect. So you can see here next to name, you've got that status column, so you can see some clouds, you can see some ticks, those sorts of things. That's really important to know that that content is being accessed via the cloud. But in terms of the way you behave, in terms of using it, double clicking, open them up, it will launch desktop apps from your computer, all those sorts of things. All those ways of working are exactly the same, which is really great.
Absolutely, and it's going to open your desktop software for Microsoft. So these status icons, the little cloud just means it's available in your cloud space for you to draw on. When you sync your files, it doesn't grab everything on your OneDrive and draw it down your computer. That would really probably cause you some connectivity issues during that process of transfer. Basically, what it means is these are available to you, and as you open it, it downloads a local copy, and then every change you make automatically syncs, this being a sync client, syncs back to the cloud server. And that's what this little green tick indicates. This file has been opened on this computer at some point in time, and that's why we see the little green tick. There is a few other status icons that aren't on the screen at the moment, but there's one that looks like a little refresh symbol. And if I open up, say, this Lego activity file, this you may see
that, for a second, didn't it?
Yeah, it did change briefly for a moment. I'll just minimize that Word doc. As you can see, it's opened straight into a Word doc online in your desktop app. And this little icon, you can see now it's turned to a little tick. The little person next to it means it's been shared with someone. If something's currently syncing back with the cloud, you'll see like a little refresh symbol pop up there. And the only other one that you may see could be a dark green tick, where you can set certain files to always reside on this computer. And I wonder whether it'll let us do that today. If I right click, see there's an option here that says always keep on this device. If I was to tick that, it would turn that icon into a dark green. That means any change to that file at any time will save a copy back to your local computer and on the web, as opposed to the open green dot is that it'll only send the changes as you open the file.
What do you think? What do you think some of the reasons why you might want to do that, Jared? Do you think in terms of keeping that content on your device, and where would you not want to do that, I guess?
You wouldn't want to do it en masse, I would say. Yep. It would probably cause a lot of bottlenecking in your internet bandwidth. The reason why you'd probably want to do it, I would think, if you have somewhere with poor connectivity. So if I was going out, if I had a presentation that I'd need to do at a school, I would probably just set that one file to always keep on my device, just so I have no connectivity issues. Or if you would like to work on a file offsite where you have poor internet, you can do that, and when you join the internet again, it'll resync those changes pending that someone hasn't changed your file as well. Yeah, so sometimes you get a few conflicts there with that. It is an option, but I would use it minimally, depending on your connectivity where you are.
Absolutely, and you can also do it to whole folders. So I guess just be cautious. Yes. You could click on one of those larger folders that could actually contain hundreds, maybe even thousands of documents, and if you do click always keep on this device to the folder, it actually applies to everything that sits within that folder. So we don't want to use up our local storage, which is the idea of cloud storage, is that it allows us to have a lot more capacity, doesn't rely on the actual computer's storage capacity. So that gives us a lot of flexibility, and means that we're not going to be filling up that storage.
And to free up space, you saw the option there. If I right click back on that file, there is an option here that says free up space, and all that does is remove the local copy of that file. So you see that little sync, that little refresh symbol now appear while some work's happening. It's removing those local files. And so if I was to open it again and to draw a fresh copy down from the cloud, hence freeing up some space on your computer. So that is the sync client for your personal files, Adam. Yeah. What's next on our list?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess once we've got our, step one is signing into that OneDrive, then the ability to actually view and locate our Microsoft Teams locations or our Microsoft Teams files through a very similar interface is really handy. I know some schools really enjoy using Microsoft Teams. Probably for some smaller schools, they don't need some of that functionality of Microsoft Teams. They don't need that chat space. It might be quite a simple setup, which is great. And we can actually build in some efficiencies by accessing it through the OneDrive. So what we're actually going to do is use the syncing client. We're going to utilize OneDrive as an app. And I guess we talked about that before. There's a difference between OneDrive as a cloud storage location, and then the OneDrive app is actually going to allow us to do something and connect to that Microsoft Teams content.
So we jump over to our Teams interface, and we're going to choose, when we do sync our files, you can be quite granular. You can choose some very specific spaces that you would like to show up in the File Explorer. For example, here in our team, if you are somebody that's a teacher and you're on stage 3, do you need fast and easy access to stage 1 files? Probably not. So you can choose at a very granular level what you would like to sync.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've just jumped into the faculty drive channel, and that would be for schools that have done the Filesing or Anytime migration. They might have that. If you haven't done that, or you're not quite sure what that is, you might have your own channel. It might be within the general channel or a stage learning channel. You can go in there and sync that content. But for now, I've jumped into that old teacher drive that has come from the T4L server. So as Jared said, I could go into 2022 and just sync that particular folder. For now, I'm going to sync the whole thing because I can see I don't have all that much content on there. Good time to talk about syncing large amounts of content. Jared, can I just go in and sync as much as I want, or are there any limitations to that?
There is a soft limit on the OneDrive sync client of 300,000 files. Anything over that, which is a big number.
Sounds like a lot.
It is. But it also includes everything in your OneDrive in that total. If you sync more than 300,000 items, you might have some performance issues with accessing that content through the OneDrive client. So it's good not to just sync absolutely everything, because then if you're a large school with a lot amount of files, you could approach that limit, and it won't work quite as nice.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is soft limit, but we don't want performance issues. So sticking with that limit, I guess it just comes down to only syncing what you use every day. You don't need to sync the things you access once a year or once every semester. You probably don't need access to that. Probably thinking about teaching programs, or if you're in the office, those files, Excel documents, those sorts of things you're accessing all the time are the perfect things to sync.
So we'll tell you how to turn it on now, but in a moment we'll also show you how to turn it off. You change stages in a different year. Just sync what you want.
Perfect. So into any channel or any file location, and what you're looking for up here next to, you've got new, and then moving across, you've got sync. If you're on a smaller device or a smaller screen and you do have a few more options up the top here, you might need to be looking for some 3 dots on the side to actually bring up that sync location. Depends on where you're at, but this is the one that you're looking for, is sync. So if I click on sync, and don't forget, we've already signed into our OneDrive, so that was step 1. Step 2 is clicking on that sync option. it'll pop up and just say, we're syncing your items. It's really quick. You can almost miss it. Happens really, really quickly. And it just says, we're now syncing your files, which is great. And lets you know that you can get that OneDrive app. So now, from first appearance, kind of looks like nothing has happened. However, if I jump back into my file explorer down the bottom where we were viewing our OneDrive before, what you'll notice is we've got our OneDrive as we viewed before, but directly above it is now a new little section called New South Wales Department of Education. So one thing that I really like, Jared, is the fact that it's like slightly separate. So I know that this little section up the top here is now our team's locations, whereas the OneDrive is my one user kind of content.
Yep.
Whereas this little kind of icon next to it, I kind of like to think of it as a building. I can't actually see exactly what it is. Looks like a little building, and I like to think that everything in the building belongs to everyone. So anything that you do in here, now you've synced it, treat it as a shared document. So if you delete it, it's deleted for everyone. If you update it, it's updated for everyone. If you pop something in there, everyone can access it as long as they have the existing permissions. So just to be aware of what's happening in there. So 8CS Teacher was the name of that drive, and it was the document. So if I double click on that, you can see that I've got the exact same content. So all the different used programs, some admin, some organization, resources, I've got all document 4. If I jump back in, you can see it's the exact same set of resources, and anything that is shared happens through there.
Yeah, so just like before, like I said, you can manipulate those files around. So I could grab this document 4, Control C on my keyboard to copy it. I could go to a different location. Maybe I'll jump into 2022 and I can Control V and paste that like it was a file on my computer. Just going to move it around the cloud and give me a copy in a new location. So it's really good to be able to manipulate those files in that manner.
Perfect. So really, really quite simple, I guess, in terms of that sync, nice and quick, and just understanding, I guess, the difference between our local and our shared content.
I guess the next thing is, how do we turn that off, right?
Absolutely. So as Jared called out, it's really good to be syncing just the content that you want. If I'm on stage 2 or stage 3, or I'm in the English faculty, you know, I only want particular content the next year. I might get thrown onto a different stage. We might be short on, and I need to jump into a slightly different faculty in high school, all those sorts of things. I might move into an executive role and I need some other content. I need to be able to actually change and manipulate what I'm syncing. So we'll go into that now. We find that down the bottom here. I've just clicked on the little arrow and I found the little blue cloud, which opens my OneDrive app, and that pops up here in this little menu. Now you see an option here that says Help and Settings. I'm going to go there, shows all the things that we've just synced or touched upon. That document 4 was the last thing we did, but I'm going to go here to Settings. And it's going to show me the different locations that I currently have synced. So I've got my OneDrive and I've got my 8CS Teacher documents. What I am going to do, just to show the difference, earlier today we synced the the team's early stage 1 channel, and then we turned it off. And that's why you notice there's no little blue cloud here, not currently drawing on files, because what we did was we went in here to this space, we're syncing our personal files, we're syncing that 8CS Teacher documents, but I can go here and say Stop Sync. And when I do say Stop Sync, the little cloud on this side will eventually, in a moment, that will disappear. Probably once I hit OK, and it'll no longer draw those files from the cloud, and may need to. And actually, we've lost the ability. You've seen that Department of New South Wales one disappear now from the list because we're not syncing any teams' locations. So I might just jump back into the team. I might go to the early stage 1 channel this time, and I'm going to go to Files, and I'm going to hit Sync again. See, it's a little bit further across on this one. Hit sync, and it is going to, it knows that there was one before. Do we want to use a new one? Do we want to use that existing one? I'm just going to say existing for the sake of demonstration today. Back here in the File Explorer, Department of Education's appeared. See the little cloud is here next to this one, no longer that one. And we can go from there to access all the files that sit inside that channel this time. So the sync client's a really great way to access our files, and it's actually going to open the door for what we're going to talk about next, which is more, how do we harness those efficiencies and those workflows? What's some ways of working in the cloud that just helps us move forward? And I guess the first thing in this space is when we create a file, Adam, what's a good workflow? How did we used to save our files? How are we going to save it now? Yeah, absolutely. And just before we dive into that, I just thought I'd mention, in terms of that syncing and that OneDrive, it is per device.
It is.
So really important to know that, yes, maybe we're on this device and I've synced a particular location, but if I jump onto my laptop and I sign into my OneDrive, I won't have that team space. So you choose each device you're on, you need to go through that syncing process. For the most part, might be 1 or 2 devices, maybe 3 at the most. but you won't use it on a shared device. So if you've got a shared laptop in your staff room or something like that, I wouldn't be syncing content. I would just go through the browser or go through Microsoft Teams to access that.
And one last, probably another good point in that is that you probably don't want, if you've got student shared devices, I wouldn't be asking your students to sync if you might have 20, 30 people use a laptop in a week. If everyone syncs, it's really going to grind that laptop to a halt. It's going to start operating quite slowly. So for a shared student device, WebView, we recommend that teachers use the sync client on their personal device and on their MLD, because you might only have 2 or 3 people using that in a week, and a small number's okay. But when you start getting to a large amount of people syncing the files, it does have a performance issue if you do it en masse.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
perfect. All right, so looking at creating new files, I guess.
Yes.
The old kind of habit, and I'm still very much in this habit, I guess. We've finished syncing. We'll bring out Microsoft Teams down. Let's go to our desktop.
Yeah.
So I would be looking for, say, Microsoft Word. So I might go down the bottom, type in Microsoft Word, and I might kick up a brand new document. That's I guess the habit that we're in. This is the interface we're used to. Opens up. I might have a blank document. I might have some existing ones that I'm going into. Let's open up a blank document. So you'll notice here, I guess on the screen up the top, autosave is turned off, which means this is not, and I guess we know that when we launch up a document, the first thing we kind of try to do is save it somewhere. We need to remember to do that. I guess if Jared and I were working on this document here and then something happened, maybe a fire alarm went off and we had to quickly leave, or for whatever reason, and this computer had to be shut down, whatever some very important work that we're working on here would just be lost. So because the autosave is not on, I didn't start it in the cloud-based environment. I just launched it up off the Word document app, which is okay. I can then choose to now save this. So if I am in that mindset of then having to save, I can, as I normally do, go to save as. Now, on our devices, your OneDrive does pop up, which is great. It also gives you some SharePoint options. It knows who we are in terms of how we have access to SharePoint. These two options can be a little bit kind of confusing or deceiving. You might not be as familiar with it. A place that I really like to go is right down the bottom into Browse. Yeah,
pretty much every app that you use will have a browse option, and it'll bring up this very familiar interface where we can go and find our OneDrive, or we can go find our team space where we want to save a file.
Yeah, perfect. So you'll notice it's defaulted to documents. Now, documents is a place that's on this computer. So it's local storage. It's not going to be shared to any of my other devices or shared to any shared space as well.
Let's when we look at this Word doc today, let's say this is something that's going to be used by my whole grade or my whole faculty. Yep. I probably want to put it in Teams environment, I think.
Absolutely. So this is our OneDrive just for me. This is something I've created. That's not what we're doing today. This is something that's going to be definitely shared. So I'm going to jump into my shared space. And then I can see that I've got my 8 central primary team in here. And that's the one with the cloud. So that's the one that I want. I can then hit in. It's where do I want it to live? Really important. I guess I need to choose where that's going to be to help keep our files tidy. I don't want to just dump it very much in the very top level, because this is a piece of work that sits somewhere. It might be something we're creating for general resources. We'll pop it in there. And let's click on save. Perfect. So instantly, Jared, some changes. We've got right at the top left-hand corner, autosave is on, which is great.
That means every keystroke. So even in this document now, if I press enter and I just simply add some text at the very top of the screen there, you see it says saving up next to the file name. Every single keystroke automatically saved back to the cloud.
Absolutely.
Very important to do. But is there a better way, Adam, even again, maybe at the commencement? Now, we went into a Word doc and we started typing, and at the end of our work, we went file save, which is the way we used to do it. However, I know at the end of a lot of my lessons is that the bell's gone, all the students want to tear out of the room, and all their work's not done. You're yelling over the top trying to say, this is the process of saving. Is there a better way that we should be creating these files, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. A couple of different ways. So I guess we'll dive into the File Explorer where we've been kind of showing some content. So you can see that general resources, that's got a little updating symbol because we've got that Word document open. We're currently editing it. So it knows that we're currently working on that. And as Jared said, every single keystroke gets saved, which is really great. So let's go into, say, I'm going to create some homework. It is term 2 into term 2, let's say. Then from this empty space here, and you presumably would have already some existing content in there, but I'm going to find an empty bit of space on the screen, and I'm going to right click with my mouse. So then I can go right down the bottom, just before properties, you've got new. So you might not know, straight from this file explorer, I can click on new, and then I can actually go in and create any Microsoft option there. So I've got a Microsoft Word document I can start up, I can get a Microsoft PowerPoint or a publisher document, interestingly enough, or an Excel worksheet. So any of, I guess, the standard Microsoft tools that we use every day, those programs, I can launch it straight from the location where I want it saved, plus it's already in the cloud.
That's
so
right.
A couple of benefits. So let's go a Word document from here. What will it do? It pops it straight in. It wants me to name it straight away. I really like that. I like that flow for students as well. When we're working in the cloud, they've got to name it before they kind of kick into it. So to say that, you know, document 1, document 2, document 3, or untitled documents, it means we've got to name it straight away. Then when I double click on that, reaches for the desktop app, and you can see it's opened a second document. But from the very beginning, I've got autosave on. It's updating as we go, and then I don't need to worry.
That's right. Autosave's automatically turned on. Students don't need to worry about it. Anything happens at all at any time, their work is automatically saved, and you can move on without that issue. So I really like that workflow for both teachers and for students. So in your classroom, now it doesn't have to be in the desktop client. We were talking about students, and in that student situation, we touch on this a little bit later, you can have a student-facing team, but let's imagine for a moment that a student has access to one of these folders. Same thing would happen. I'm going to assume that a student, let's pretend a student can get into this folder into turn 2. They would just go new and then choose from this list. Same process for students. Go to their team's location, go to where you want the file to live, and new. That's a much better workflow than creating one, having to save later. Problems can occur. Small efficiency, but over time has a bit of benefit.
Definitely. And it's also a bit part of that, I guess, Joe, removing that duplication.
Yes.
And if we make it, we save it somewhere local, we then copy that somewhere to the cloud. I now got my local copy and my cloud copy. Which one's the most recent? I know we've all come across that issue where one person is working on one version of a document, another person's working on another copy of that version of that document. And then we finally meet up and realize we're working on 2 completely different documents, and having to merge that information is time.
100%. So probably brings us to the next little efficiency, and it's about something as simple as adding an attachment to an email. Now, what I've seen in a lot of school visits that we've done is that people might have their files in Teams. To get it onto an email, if they haven't turned the sync client on, of course, they're finding the file, they're downloading it to their desktop, they're going into their email, they're adding an attachment, they're getting it off their desktop, and they're sending it. But in that process, you've got one cloud file, you just download it to your desktop, you've got a second copy now of that file, and then you've emailed it off, and you've created a third copy of that same file. Does it need to be that complicated? Probably not. It all depends on what's the purpose of your file. Firstly, we can save one of those copies by using a desktop sync client. So if we were to attach a file to an email, and we'll see whether we can get an email up on this test account that we have here today. Going to our Outlook on the web.
I guess good time to quickly touch on. You've got your Outlook via the web. You also have a desktop app as well. Yes. So you could use either of those. I know mostly as a classroom teacher, I usually use the browser version. I know office staff and probably school executive, they usually use the desktop version, but both versions offer some really good options.
Yeah, and they're available now. The desktop wasn't available in the past. It's actually a really good program. I would recommend it. Right. So here, if we wanted to attach something to the email, go in the subject. At the top of the screen, we see the little paperclip there. Now you can attach it straight. Like we said before, I really like the idea of just hitting browse every time because I get this familiar interface that I know and I've been using for a long time. I could go to my OneDrive or I could go to my team space, but let's go to OneDrive for now. And let's grab that Lego activity that we were looking at before. 2 files down, there it is there. And that's way less clicks. Attach, location, get the file. Oh, we've got it open. That's probably why. Let's just choose a different file now for this example.
360 camera, let's say.
Yeah, that was a good one. We're going to add that photo to this email. So that's far less clicks, and we've only creating one copy of the file. That in this instance, we'd like them to have their own copy, not a shared copy. And so that's going to remove that duplicating. You're not going to save it onto your desktop, and then you can imagine crazy amount of icons on your desktop. People don't tend to go back and delete it. So let's cut that process out, use the sync client, attach using that method. And that is something that front office staff especially find that very, very useful.
Perfect. So I guess sending out a copy of an image, Jared, is not such a big deal. You can duplicate some image, that's fine. But if it's a document that you want people to work on, ideally I'm sending it out to maybe some staff on my team or those sorts of things. And I actually want everyone to be collaborating on this document. It could be stored in my OneDrive, it could be stored in the shared space, but I also just want to remind people of where it is. So I want to pop it in the email so that with a single click, they can go to the document and start editing those things. What's a way that we can share a collaborative document maybe through an email rather than sending that copy?
Oh, absolutely. So you should utilize the share options within, say, this Word document. So rather than, as I said, we're not going to create any duplication. By here at the top of the screen, we click on share, and I'm going to get a copy of the link that allows people to work on this document. Now, we'll delve into the specific share options in a little bit more detail later. But one thing to be aware of, it does default at this point to a view-only copy. So we are asking people to work on it with us. Let's click here on where it says Can View. It'll bring up a bigger set of settings that we can choose from. One thing that I'm going to change at this instance, I'm going to change it from Can View to Can Edit. And then it's just off my screen a little bit right now, but here at the very, very bottom, it's going to say copy the link. Now they can edit. I'm going to take that link and we can go back to our email and I can paste that link. And the good thing about doing this from Word, you get the copy. It looks like they're sharing the file with you, but it's actually a link into that file. No duplication, one file, multiple purposes to use that. So that is a much better way to share a file to reduce that heavy duplication, which is what really clogged up our ET for service before, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess they often had a look around and saw what was in schools and what was in school drives, and the duplication of names and saying version of, or this one, or this is the last version, or updated version, or even dating documents.
Yes.
It works. Like, you can navigate it. If you date your documents properly, you can. But I guess we just want to save that little bit of time, and every little bit of time that we can pull back by maybe changing a quick little workflow to make things a little bit better and more efficient.
Definitely a better way of working. So I guess when it comes to one of the things that we chatted about earlier is that consolidating of your personal files. So we do know that as teachers, we always like to keep everything. You never know when you might need it one day.
Always
right?
need it.
Yeah, always need it. And I've seen many times with the multiple USBs on a lanyard around the teacher's neck. I used to have many of them turn up to my door. A little bit upset because for some reason they're very, very important. USB is no longer working. Unfortunately, quite often there's not much we can do with the files in that space.
Yeah, it could be anything. It could be a physical kind of corruption of the data. It could have been just dropped in a bucket of water.
Yeah,
could have spilled a coffee on it. Could have just lost it altogether. Kids have lost it down the corner of the couch. All sorts of things. So I guess those USBs are really good, and they are quick to plug in, and you can use them, which are great. But the actual, it's very reliant on that little stick or a portable hard drive that you can carry around. But things can go wrong. I guess the sustainability of trusting Microsoft to look after those sorts of things. I guess it takes the weight off us of remembering to bring it around, checking that we've got it, and also the chance of it being destroyed is much, much slimmer.
100%. So probably you're having all your personal files in multiple locations is not very efficient. So we think it's a good idea to start consolidating those personal files into a single location. Highly likely that one of those locations is, as we said, a USB or one of those portable hard drives, which quite often requires an extra cord and things of that nature. Another space could be the ET for old files from that personal U drive. So as the department, you would have seen it down the bottom of this list in the past, might have been your name down here. And that was a 1 gigabyte server space where you might have saved files in there for you to use at your time at school. Now, you are probably watching this video because you have gone with Microsoft as your option. You may have some point in time, maybe you've come from another school, and all your files are actually sitting in a Google Drive. So we're going to quickly talk about what are the quick processes of let's get everything from those other locations. We want to get them into our OneDrive for our personal use. Yeah. So the first one being that the USBs and portable hard drives. What's a really quick way to get things off a USB and into our OneDrive?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see we've got we've got a USB plugged in down here. So if we click on that one, we've got some folders in here, some documents, those sorts of things. I might want to grab that file, so I can actually click on that. And I guess what we showed before, you can do the copy and paste. Yeah, can be something that can be done. Alternatively, if we shrink this screen down,
and I want to, there's a little shortcut here. If you hold the Windows key and press left, see how it snaps to one side. And we might open we'll right click on that and get another file explorer open. And I'm going to go Windows key right arrow. See how I've got the two file explorers on either side of the screen. How are we going to do this?
So we've got our USB here, the original window that we opened, and this one's defaulted to this PC, but I'm going to jump over to my OneDrive. So left window, I've got my USB. Now the left window could be USB, could be Google Drive, could be U Drive, basically anywhere else where you've got content. It could be a couple of different USB drives. I know that at some stage back in the past, I probably had 2 or 3 on the go at the same time. I couldn't remember what was on each of them because at some point I lost one, started a new one, found the old one, all that kind of thing. So we want to be able to consolidate as much as we can into the one place. And we talked about the OneDrive being that USB that follows you around, but it's in the cloud. So to move the content across,
probably want to first of all choose the right location you want it to go into.
Absolutely.
I don't like the idea of just drag and dump. Maybe put it in a name a space or create a space, or maybe you have an existing space that you'd like those files to appear in. So have them open the source and the destination open.
Yeah, perfect. So I might choose to drop that into a documents folder. I know what that's going to be for. And as I picked up this user manual, driving it across, you can see it pops up with copy to document. So you don't need to kind of stress out too much. It's not moving the actual documents, not deleting the original. I guess we do encourage you, once you have moved it, to think about deleting the original, because it's hard to break a habit if you've still got that content living in that location. So to shift work habits, we encourage you, once you're confident in the new space, try and get rid of the old space as best you can. So I'm just going to drop that in. What I'll do is actually make a copy across, and you can see instantly it's syncing. So it's sending it up to cloud. Didn't take long. Done, synced and ticked. There we go. So it's made that copy. Now, we probably recommend if you're moving a whole lot of things. So if I had an absolute chock-a-block full drive over here and I was dragging everything across, I might do it in small batches. I might do it 3 or 4 or 5 folders at a time, just to make sure I get my ticks and my sync content. Really good to maybe, once you've moved it, jump onto the browser view. Let's go over here. You can always jump onto the browser view and just check that that content is actually there. So if I go down into documents, I can have a look, and there's my user manual. So because I'm viewing in the browser view, I know that it's 100% there. The desktop view, sometimes we need to double check the syncing and those sorts of things. But once I know it's in that browser view, it wouldn't show up there if it wasn't sitting in that cloud space.
Yeah, good place to check that everything has moved over. And that process is exactly the same if you are coming off that ET for U Drive. That'll just be one of the options in the left. You just drag it across to that OneDrive on the right. The last option we did talk about is how do we get it from a Google space into a Microsoft space. There is something to consider here. You can get a Google Sync client. We don't have it currently on this device. But if you have anything that was created as a Google Doc, right, or a Google Slide, or a Google Sheet,
Google native application. So anything that runs on Google is browser-based. So it's a real benefit of Google, the fact that it's always browser-based, it's always going to be live.
Yes.
There's no syncing, a little bit like Microsoft. So when you're using that desktop client, it kind of needs to talk to the cloud constantly to upload and download that information. With Google, it kind of doesn't have that because it's always in the browser. Now, lots of benefits to that. The one that's not so much of a benefit is the fact that you can't store, something that always lives in the browser. There's no physical file on your computer, so it can't actually be stored in that OneDrive because there's no physical file to download. So to be aware, I guess those native Google Docs, it's not as simply as we just showed in terms of a drag and drop. If there were Google Docs in that folder that I moved across, that it will pop up and say there's a bit of a problem with that. We can't actually move that for you. Any Microsoft content, pictures, PDFs, anything that's a physical file that normally lives on your computer, perfectly fine. Yeah, so if you do have a Google native doc that you need in your Microsoft land, then you'd have to, from the Google space, download it, and you can download it as a doc, and then you have to manually do a drag and drop. So you might manually download it here to the desktop or to a documents folder, and then it'll be a matter of dragging it from that downloaded space into your cloud storage space, just to make... I might just quickly jump into the Google Drive. Oh, I won't. Yes, I will. Jump into the Google Drive space. This might be my drive, and I might have stored some things. I might have experienced Google in the past, and I might have had some content there. Then maybe I shifted across to Microsoft. It's been a couple of years, but there's actually some really good content still living in my drive. And you can see these first ones here are Word documents, but anything that is Google native, in terms of, especially things like Jamboards and those sorts of things, you can see this is a Google Doc here. If I did want that, I can just click on the 3 dots and then I can download from here. So I can either download from the browser, or if I'm using the Google Drive syncing client, which will be in our how do you utilize Google tools in another webinar session or different video, you can download. So I can click on download. And what it's doing, you can see in the bottom corner there, converting to Word, which is great. So it does convert it. Are the conversions always perfect? Well, maybe not. Google and Microsoft are different companies.
Yeah.
They do have slightly different agendas, so we just need to be aware of that. It's pretty good now, much better than it used to be.
Probably
I think it's getting better all the time.
Yeah, I think the two areas that you might notice a difference is formatting of tables and maybe font choice. They're going to be the two. So just be aware there may be some adjustments need to be made once you've moved them. There's no reason why you can't operate out of two spaces as well.
Absolutely.
If you choose, if you know you think you know it's going to be a long time before you ever need to go back to Google, sometimes it's really helpful. Or maybe you'll just do that process as required on a file that you need.
Perfect. I thought I might just quickly jump in and show. I did download that document, so it's probably going into my downloads there.
Yeah.
There's that digital scope and sequence. So you can see it's a Word document, which is great. And if I move that across there, let me open up another window. So obviously downloads, again, that's a local storage. So whenever you set things to downloads, it is stored locally. So I do need to choose to shift that across. So I can pop into my OneDrive. It might be something to do with, you know, this classroom content in there, digital scope and sequence, drag it across, and now I can pop that in. And now I've got my Word document there. I'd probably choose to put that in a folder.
Yeah, some sort of organized.
Keep things organized.
But for the sake of demonstration,
I guess that's the process. We've downloaded that from Google, converted it to Microsoft if needed, and then now we've got it stored in our OneDrive. I could have just as easily dragged that into our shared space.
Yeah,
exactly the same if we've got it synced.
100%. So those are just some efficiencies we looked at in a couple of workflows. So just to recap, we definitely recommend having your sync client installed and turned on. We definitely recommend having the different ways of sharing, attaching and saving. And then we looked at consolidating. The last thing that we want to talk about is mobile devices. So if you, as teachers, we use a camera a lot. We use maybe our phone or a tablet to take photos of student work samples. It's probably best practice not to save photos of students per se on your personal device. And there is a way using the app, using the OneDrive app to save photos, is the example that we're going to show you today. How can we really easily get a photo from a mobile device, so in this case an iPad, that'll go straight into a Teams environment and not being stored locally on your personal device?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of benefits to that, I guess. One is a bit of security. We know that content's stored on a school server or a school cloud-based location as opposed to our personal content. Of course, teachers always need to capture that content during activities or during learning lessons.
It could be excursions, it could be all manner of things that we need to connect to get photographic evidence for our
definitely something we need to do in schools. I think it's something that has to be done. Your school might choose to use a professional camera, which is perfectly fine, but your mobile devices are becoming more friendly, and this process I think just speeds up that as well. So we don't need to get that cable, plug it in, move them across, then choose to delete them. We can do it in one nice little flow. So let's bring up an iPad.
Now we've got that here. So we've got Adam's got an iPad here on the desk. And he's going to jump into his OneDrive app and show you how to take a photo that instantly goes into the team space.
Perfect. So you can see here, I've got the OneDrive app. So if this is a school device that you're going to be using, a school iPad, and I'd probably say that's the most common tablet within a school, you do need to get the OneDrive app. I've also got the Google Drive app, and we'll touch on that in our other Google's concentrated video. You've also got Microsoft Teams app. So depending on how you use your iPad, whether it's a shared iPad or personal or student iPad, and how you utilize it, you can put all of these apps on there. I've also got a little collection of other Microsoft and Google Suite apps as well that you can have a look at. To get that on there, it does need to be done, I guess, centrally from using Jamf and Apple School Manager to push that out. If it's a personal device like the one I'm using today, just jump onto the App Store, search for the app you want, and then download it and go from there. So I'm going to tap on OneDrive and open it up, and I've gone a little bit too far there. Let me jump back a step. Perfect. So this is the interface that pops up. I really like that it shows you some of your frequented locations. So it will pop up with the SharePoint locations or the Microsoft Teams locations. And we probably didn't go into too much, I guess, of that explanation in terms of SharePoint and Microsoft Teams, but we call these SharePoint locations. Basically, it's the bucket that stores all the content at the back of your Microsoft team.
Just as a quick summary, Teams is like a wrapper that wraps around a whole bunch of different programs. It's got communications and calendars and assignments and files. And that file portion, it's like the warehouse where all your files are stored, is your SharePoint. How we're using the Teams interface to access that file storage. and that's what appears on the screen.
Absolutely. So when you first log in, it might take you here, which is home. Very similar to, I guess, that browser interface of Microsoft tries to show you all the recent things, all the things that you're interacting with, which is great.
Yeah.
You can just jump into files. So I just tap the one at the bottom. That files one is your OneDrive. So that's your personal content. You can see that file. Those folders are exactly the same as we viewed both on the browser and in the desktop app. So you can see that familiar kind of interface, and I can actually access the content across a lot of devices, which is great. But I'm going to tick across to libraries, which is on the far right hand side, and that will show me my Microsoft Teams. Now I could go into one of these locations and then upload some content straight to there, or open it up straight from there as well, which is really handy. But I'm actually going to use this little camera icon down the bottom, and I like that it's there instantly, kind of a reminder when I open up OneDrive, the camera's there, I can take a snap. So if I do tap on that, it opens up my camera straight away. Now I've got a nice little T for All magazine over here. I'm going to take a little snap of that. We'll bring that across. Now you'll notice just below my little take a photo circle, white circle, it defaults to documents. So that's actually going to take a document scan, which is pretty nice. And what that does is actually converts it to a PDF.
It does. As
soon as you take the photo. If you don't want a PDF, then you just need to simply tap on the bottom one and it takes a photo. Now you notice when I switch to photo, it's removed those little kind of white corners. It was kind of trying to track that document. So I might take it back to document because this is a document I might want to take a photo of. This could be a sample of students' work.
Yep.
This could be a poster on the wall that you want to digitize. Could be a whole range of things. So I'm going to grab a snap of that. Now you can see what it's done is it's kind of like grabbed that. It's removed all the excess stuff around the outside, which I love. So it's tidied up the photo for me. Really great for students if they can capture it this way as well, because I know, I don't know how many times that I've had to help students take photos of their work, chop out all the excess stuff, those sorts of things. It does it all for me, nice and easy. I can click on confirm down the bottom right-hand corner. And it's going to come up with some options for me down the bottom. I can add another photo. So if I wanted to go in, I might open up the magazine. Click on the very bottom left, it's kind of small. Let me bring my mouse down there. I can add another one. So I click on add, takes me back to the camera again. Let's take a photo of this one here. Snap. Now it has chopped off a little bit of what I want, but what I love is I can grab the little handle in the middle and just drag him up and include that information that I want. So that's what I want to grab there. Confirm. And you can see that little blue icon on the left. I've got two photos. So I could keep on snapping away. I could take as many as I want, which is great. I just click on that little blue one to go to the next step. So I'm happy with the two photos and I want to move on. I could do some digital inking, add some text. I could do a whole lot of things, which is great, built into the OneDrive app, but I'm going to click on done down the bottom corner. Now this is where it's going to prompt me to where I want to save my content. So I have saved it previously to a channel within my team called Media Library. Great thing to set up in your school. Yeah. Nice central place for all the content. You might have someone using...
especially for photos, right?
Yeah, using a school newsletter, school website, that kind of content. Your office staff might be running that, or it might be another teacher in your school, and they're always asking you to send them stuff, and everyone flicks them emails with all the photos, and it's really slow.
Yes.
As someone who's kind of worked in that like a media space in school, slow to gather all that content together. So let's try and find a really easy central way to put that content in. So it's pre-selected Media Library, but I want to go and have a look at how I actually find it. So in other locations, underneath my files, which is my drive, I could save it there, but I actually want to save it in the shared space, which is that primary team. I'm going to pop it in there. It takes me to documents. Documents is just a level above all of our channels. So if I tap on documents, you'll now see all of those channels. I've got staff lounge, faculty drive, etc., etc. I've got all those locations. If I scroll down a little bit, I'll get down to my media library, which is sitting there right there in the middle. So if I tap on media library, it's not showing me anything, that's fine, but I've got that save here option. So I click on save here. Then it's going to prompt me, it's selected the location, and now I actually get to name that. So I could say 2 mag pics. Perfect. And I might be a little bit more descriptive, really great for the person who's accessing the content to know exactly what I mean. Naming conventions are important. This is a bit of a lazy naming here, but we'd probably do a better job another time. Once I'm happy with that, there's a little tick at the top corner. Tick on that one. And then it's actually uploaded it. So previously I uploaded just the magazine cover. Now I've actually done 2 photos as well. So that is straight up into the cloud. And you can see in the sharing, it's shared as well. Jared's just going to jump across into the Microsoft Teams, in Media Library, in Files, and if we click on that one as well, you'll actually see within, I don't know, that was probably about 5 seconds. It's actually shifted across. I've got that one page, and actually it's 2 pages of that document. Really good quality capture because of that scanning OneDrive. Obviously, a little bit reliant on the quality of your iPad, but the scanning option does do a little bit of work to make those captures really great. So perfect for images of what's happening in the school. You can keep on clicking on that add button and do a bunch at the same time.
Yep.
Or for scanning documents.
And if you want from your team space, if you click here on the top, it says all documents, you can say, show me as a tile, and you'll get a little thumbnail then. Makes it really easy to quickly navigate what is what in your media library. Cool. So I think we, so if you, at your school, if you follow those steps in your, if you follow those steps, we feel like, if I just jump back to where we were.
Yeah, jumped back to our slide.
It was back here in our slide deck, or not that one, it's a student portal. Let's go to
that OneDrive.
It is in this window, isn't it?
Yeah,
there we go.
Files anywhere, anytime, far right hand side.
Oh, that one there. There we go. Beautiful. So, yeah, so we've just explained those steps about syncing, creating, consolidating, and uploading. Some of those steps. If you feel like that all your staff are confident in performing those steps, it'll kind of move you towards the developing phase, which would be in our next video.
Perfect. And I guess, Jared, we've got to mention this is a webinar recording. So
it is webinar recording.
Not live. However, really great that whenever this webinar is showing, if you're watching it right now, there is someone with good knowledge manning the chat. So if you do have any questions or something's popped up and you've watched through this video and you thought, I really need a bit more information about that, I'd love to see a link that shows some of those resources, because there are supportive video resources for some of these flows as well, which is great. You can pop it in the chat. Someone will be there to respond to you straight away. Alternatively, if you get to the end and you think, I don't have time to post in the chat now, you can always capture some of these contact details, Schools Digital Strategy or T4L Innovations, and you can shoot off an email to those excellent people there, and they'll get back to you really quickly.
Absolutely. So that's probably, as you said, definitely a good place. The T4L website's a good place to find some resources as well, I think.
Absolutely.
But if you are watching this right now as a webinar, feel free to throw any questions in the chat. And someone will definitely answer you sooner rather than later. But yeah, if for whatever reason you're watching it later, that's where you go.
Definitely. And I guess that takes us a little bit from that emerging space into developing. So the basics, I guess we call it, or step one, moving into the cloud. If you've got all those things up and running in your school, you're probably sitting in a pretty good place. Everyone can locate the content, everyone can access it. We're working on slightly different ways of sharing that content and I guess consolidating some of that personal information rather than having one USB here, a bit of Google Drive there, maybe some OneDrive, or the habit of saving on my desktop or into my downloads or into my documents. So spending a bit of time getting ourselves organized. Obviously changing things does take time, but hopefully what you've seen today will save you time down the track. I guess we've got to invest time to save time sometimes. Yeah, absolutely. And we find that a lot of schools that sort of fall into this emerging category, I guess, don't we? Where there's a lot to learn. It is a big change for some people. When you were heavily reliant on the server before, this is probably a space where you would need to start. But you also need to ask yourself, are all your staff, you maybe as the person watching this might feel very confident with these steps, but you may need to ask, is everyone at your school confident in those steps, especially our front office and sometimes even executive staff and principals and those sorts of people within our school who have a busy workload, lots of things happening all the time. They don't always have that break space to have a think about changing some of those workflows. They've got a lot of things going on at the same time. So I guess if you do have some capacity and some skill, or you've learned something from this, definitely share it with your staff. They can come and watch the same session, or maybe take couple little snippets and feed it into a professional learning session at the school. Yeah, absolutely. So there are a whole bunch more steps that will follow this video, and we'll probably show that in a separate session, I think, time-wise. But that'll show you the next steps move from that developing into a consolidating space to really improve those efficiencies at your school. And hey, if we can save teachers time in a administration way, or in a teaching and learning capacity, it can only be a good thing. Absolutely, absolutely. Perfect. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah,
and we'll see you in the next session.
Catch you on the next one.